Episode 20! Good grief. No, episode 20. Right, okay, so it's past its MOT. We've got a few bits and bobs to fix post the MOT, which you're going to see in a moment. And yeah, enjoy it. Feedback, blah de blah, subscribe, do what you want to do. Good fun. Okay, let's get on with this ignition issue that I had. So basically the problem was that when I was driving, it would work, and then it would start to cough and splutter, the engine would cut, it would be turning over because of the road speed going through the gearbox, and then it would restart, and then it would cut again, and then it would conk out completely, and then it would be a complete ball's ache to start. And I diagnosed in the end by running a wire from the battery to the ballast resistor down here, I could get it running. So there's something gone wrong with this wire. I know it's all curly at the moment, so I wrapped it around to insulate it, but this pink-white wire here is the one that's causing my problem. Now, when I got this car, there was all manner of weird wiring going on around the coil, so I'm wondering if this is a long-standing problem. So, where are we? That wire goes back to the top of the fuse box over here. Okay? Let's turn this radio off for a minute. Boing, boing, boing. One of the nice things about these early cars, by the way, is you can tip the bonnet right back. Bonnet goes right back. Just use a plastic bottle or something to protect it against the screen. And you can get access. You don't need to take the bonnet off to lift the engine out. Right, okay, so somewhere back up here on these connectors will be a white wire or a white and pink wire. And I am not seeing that. I'm seeing white and yellow, white and brown. So I need to go through the loom now and work out where this wire comes from. It'll be spliced in somewhere, but ultimately all it needs is to be one of the on the white wire circuit, so it's ignition controlled, and yeah, that's all it needs. So it could well be that I just end up having to unpick the loom back up to here, work out which one of these it will go off. It will definitely be a white one, not a brown one. It's possible. Distributor, there's distributor, there's ballast resistor, there's the white and pink wire that goes into it, and then there's a connector. And it turns into a white wire. And the white wire goes back to, excuse me, pop rivet, the white wire goes back to top end, the unfused side of one of the fuses. Oh, yeah, we've had quite a lot of bother with those, haven't we? Oh, we've had quite a lot of bother. I might have to edit that out. We've had quite a lot of bother with those, haven't we? Fucking swallows, they're farting like I don't know what. Anyway, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Sometimes the only way to go forwards is to go backwards. So, I've unwrapped the loom across the bulkhead, right the way down to the starter motor. There's the wires that go to the starter motor. Luckily, the wire that goes to the alternator just goes straight to the back of the starter motor. That's exactly what I thought. And the whole thing is going to get replaced because I am able to just snap this insulation like this all the way along it. It's utterly, utterly fucked. Yeah, high current. It's not snapping there, it's snapping up here. You see, I just snap the insulation off it. So I'm going to replace the whole thing, one end to the other. That's easy. Do that. The further you dig into these things. Right, okay, so I found the pink-white wire goes down to the transmission tunnel, and there's a white wire that goes down there either. Now, none of these two wires have got any business whatsoever down there. There's a green feed, which goes to diff lock and reverse light switches, and there's a black and white, which goes to the handbrake switch. And that's these three. So these two additional wires go down there, the pink and the white you can see go down there, but they must splice somewhere down there at some point, and that could well be a weak point as well. Because like I say, when I first got this car, I distinctly remember there was all manner of bloody bodgery wiring around the coils. It's quite possible this is a long-standing problem that I'm trying to unravel. Now, I can do it. I could do anything, me. But it does mean I've got to undo all the bloody connections on the loom. Down on the gearbox, which is a faff. Now, okay, where were we? We were talking about this loom. That is the connector in the ignition circuit where it goes from pink and white to white. How much more fucking awkward do I want to make that? So I'm going to unpick all this, rebind the loom, splice the white and the pink up here, replace the white and pink, tidy all this lot up down here, refeed it back through. What on earth is that? Oh, that's a bullet connector in there. I can tidy all this lot up. And and then put the bloody thing back together again. Right, next thing I've noticed, the white wire that feeds the distributor, or the ballast resistor via this stupid little fucking crimp here. Look at the state of the back of the wire on the back. It's the white wire that's by my thumb, here, this one. Oh, I don't know. This might be a bit too fooked. I might have to cut this entire connector off and replace it with bullets. I think I have just proven my theory. I was able to just pull it off. The wire had gone very high resistance in that connector, so that was the root source of the ignition problems, just that connector there. So I'm going to isolate that and put another connector separate to it. That's interesting, wasn't it? Got there, sussed it, yay! Now, just need to put this lot fucking back together again. Oh, what the hell have I done? Now it's all under control, honestly. Now, fed up with electronics, I'm going to take off the cam cover and I'm going to... That's not fucking gone in straight. The fuck? I'm going to check out a couple of things as to why these tappets aren't settling down. So, rocket gear, and underneath are the shims. One shim missing. Oh, there is. These little shims that I put in, they sit underneath the pedestal. I'm going to retrieve all these. This choke cable's going to get on my tits, you can tell it already. Right, then the next thing I wanted to check, so looking at the rocket gear, make sure that all of these pads are still on. These were all new at the time. You can see where it's being used, but all of the circles, the ends of the valves, are all in the middle of the pads. So all the pads have gone on the right way round. Next thing to do is to push back the spring. Just check there's no excessive wear on the bottom end of the rocker. So I've just consulted the what's his name, the rocket gear is fine. So now I'm looking at the height of the valves. Now, I've already done this. You've got kind of, you're not getting the spoiler on this one. You put a straight edge across the top of the valves and measure the distance from the straight edge down to the valve. Now, I've got a couple of these valves. There is a big gap, and we're not talking a little gap. So you can see that. It's gravity for you. Okay, so I've got to the bottom of this fucking tap it thing now. Sorry, strobing, pissing light. I'm going to change that. It's I've checked all the power connections in it, and they're all good. It's just different design to the other ones. I don't know what on earth is going on up there. I'm going to phone up the chap, the Spark, who put it in, and moan like hell about it. Let me move away from the strobing light. I'll have to put a bloody epilepsy warning up on it. Right, okay, so looking at the back of the engine, cylinder number 8. So 8, 6, 4, 2. And these are the valve numbers, so I just numbered them as exhaust, inlet, inlet, exhaust, exhaust, inlet, and exhaust. So at the back we've got a high spot. The highest valve would appear to be the exhaust on number 8 cylinder, and then they slope towards the front. So if I put a flat edge, because my flat edge isn't quite the length of the cylinder head, if I put a flat edge across, then I've got a 19 thou gap between these two valves on that inlet valve. I've got a 17 thou and a 13 thou, and these two are like 25 thou plus. These two, I think, were where most of the noise was coming from, but I was also getting noise from the back on this head as well. So the passenger side bank is nowhere near as bad as the driver's side. So that's the highest valve, is the inlet on number 5. And these two are very, very similar in height. And we've got kind of between those two, less than 10 thou. I can't be bothered to do any more than that. It's less than 10 thou. These are about 10 thou between these front 6. And that's probably the worst one, because when I measure from that valve to that valve with a straight edge and go over the top, that's 15 thou, and that was just below 10 thou again. So this side, which seems to be a lot quieter than that side, I think it's these two at the front here, which are miles out, as I've written there. It looks like out. I can't write, sorry guys. So what I've done here is I've dug through my original measurements. These are the measurements where I took at each of the cylinders for the preload settings, and these are the gaps that I was getting when everything was assembled. And I was misled into believing that the tolerances was between 20 and 50 thou. So obviously when I'm looking at some of these, 80 thou, 70 and 70. So number 2 cylinder There we are, 70 and 70, which is that one there. And then I've put a 30 thou shim in there, which has taken that down to 22, which is fine, but it's right on the bloody limit. If I put a shim in of half the distance, because again I was looking at this, so you've got the clearance of between 40 and 60. You're looking for a clearance of 40 to 60, not 20 and 50. So this is where I think the fuck-ups occurred. I've got different instructions from different people. These have come from Real Steel. I'm going to believe these guys. So what I'm going to do is I've got some 15 thou shims around somewhere. I had them. Probably put them back in there. There they are. 15 thou shims. So I'm going to reassemble with 15 thou shims. Because if I put a 15 thou shim in, that's going to equate to taking 24 thou off any of these measurements here. None of those are going to go below 40 by taking 24 off. All of them will be under 60. Okay, I'm assuming here that nothing has changed as far as the hydraulic lifter. They're all full of oil now anyway. So I'm going to put the smaller shim in, 24 thou off any of these measurements, and that's 70 thou, 80 thou, 80 thou, 70 thou, etc. And the valve height differences, they're within 0.5 millimetre of each other. On each of the heads. This is the worst one because it's got the most extremes. So I'm going to put it back together again with the smaller shim, and the shims, by the way, these are the shims. So these shims are 30 thou. Yeah, it's about 1/3 of a millimetre, I guess. And I can use those again, not a problem. They can go back in the store, and these are the ones that are 15 thou. So it's going back together. Poo-too! This will make you lot laugh. I've just put a bit of silicone on the edge of these cork gaskets to stick them on, and I'm really struggling with this thing. Fucking look at the state of it. That's just outrageous, isn't it? Just completely settled. I don't even know how old this can was. Smells nice. It was unused, unopened, just sitting on the shelf, waiting. So I slashed it open. And that's what I found. Nice big lump of silicone. Yeah, we used to piss and tame that, wasn't it? Go in the bloody bonfire. Fucking arsewipe. Oh dear, oh dear. You take 1 step forward and 3 steps backwards. Today I'm going to get on with this thing. I've painted the inside of it. There's another dent there. I'm going to have to take this whole bonnet back. If you can see, the paint effect is quite remarkable. I don't know who painted it, but everything on here is going to have to come off. It's got a lacquer underneath, and someone's painted over the lacquer, and then painted over that lacquer, and then painted over that lacquer, and it's just reacted all over it. So there's a few nasty dents on it. Nothing particularly serious, but it's rust free. So it's getting used, and it fits, so it's getting used. I painted the inside of it, just lobbed some paint on it. It just needs a bit more around the back here, because I think that's still primer. Done. Right, okay, one prep wheel, about half used, but absolutely and utterly clogged with green paint. What was basically happening was every time this went near the top coat of the paint kind of just started bubbling up. There's no real heat in it, and I was really worried about applying any heat from the angle grinder, especially with the prep wheel on quite thin steel, because I didn't want to warp it. So I used this kind of as a sacrificial just to get rid of the top 2, maybe 3 coats of gloop, and then went through a pile of the Velcro stick-on discs, so these little fellas, on my little orbital sander. 1 minute. On my little random orbital sander. No, I didn't have to. Just pause then to edit out a fart. Right. So, yes, distracted myself then for a second. So, pleased to report that there's no filler in it, apart from that little blob in the middle there. There's quite a few little dents and nicks though. Tiny little bits like that. And that, 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 and that. This one, that. This side isn't too bad though. Nowhere near as many as one there. So what I'll do is I will put a coat of etch on this bare steel, That's going to happen tomorrow now, so I'm going to have to cover this up with a sheet. Coat of etch on top of all this, and then probably a primer, filler primer maybe, followed by a guide coat. What I don't want to do, you see, is to be putting the etch on and then flattening it down and filling over the top of the etch. I'd rather fill over the top of the primer. Yes, there's only one tiny little bit of welding done needs doing, and that's the bit I knew about anyway. There's a teensy little hole down there. It's actually quite solid around it. I've been bashing it around and it's not going anywhere. I don't know how it happened. I shall give it a tickle with the welder in the morning. Yeah, but I'm quite pleased with that. It's been half a day's work. I mean, all the black spots on here are just, they're not low spots or anything, they're just where the primer hasn't been completely taken back. I'll go over it properly tomorrow with oh, there's a big dent there. That's where the rib is. That's where all these line of dents are. It's better up there. Basically, you feel dents with the back of your hand. If there's another one there, you feel them with the back of your hand. It's all nice here. It's probably just a ridge here, but bear in mind these things are that outer shell there. That whole thing is pressed out of one single sheet of steel. So I don't think that it was supposed to be absolutely and utterly perfect, but I'm going to get this one as close to perfect as I can possibly get it. So despite all that, despite all of that, all day long, all that noise, these two here, well, this one up here has been resolute in feeding. Hello? Hello? What are you doing up there? You see the chicks? There we go. See the chicks in the nest. Whoops. Where are they? The chicks are up there. They've all put their heads back down again now. They've been quiet. And now she's making a load of noise because she thinks I'm attacking her chicks. Far from it, darling. I'm going nowhere near them. You go shouting at me. Oh, she's up there, look. Shouting at me. There. On the edge. I wasn't touching them. Honestly. I was going nowhere near them. These are different to the last lot that were up there. This one's got a white belly. This is a house martin. What's the matter? There she goes. I think I'll go away from the nest. She's happy. I think they've probably had enough of all the noise today. I was going to say fucking noise, but that's just unnecessary fucking swearing. Oh, God. Couple of jobs today. First of all, I've dismantled a load of crank pulleys. 3.9 crank pulley. The front pulley off that. The reason I dismantled it is because the front pulley off it looks very, very similar in depth and size to the one that I need. It's spot welded onto this alternator belt pulley, which I can soon drill the spot welds through. You can see around and about. Drill the spot welds and see if that is a suitable fix, because that'll be straightening things up. Then I've got other pulleys. Like that one is only just smaller, and that one's a lot smaller. So I might have a suitable replacement then for the power steering pump, so I can get a standard belt on it. But first of all, wiring's all arrived. So I'm going to not do that anymore. I'm going to rebuild this loom, get the engine started up, move him out the garage so I can get on with the painting and other stuff. I'm still waiting for the copper pipe to turn up. That'll be at some point, I expect. If the worst comes to the worst, I'll just drill the fucking hole out and put a bigger pipe in there. But then I need to have bigger fixings on this end. So I'd rather do it quarter. So loom first. Let's get that sorted out. And once the loom's done, then I can test that. I'll also test the hydraulic tappets, which I've adjusted down. That'll be exciting, won't it? Got all of the new wires in the loom that I wanted in the loom. And then what you do is you need to route the wires around the engine bay to exactly where they need to go. Now, I've got a base point. My base point is the loops on the end of these. I know they go down to the starter motors, so they go down there, and then this other one here is for the oil pressure gauge. A bit of spare wire there. So I know that the wires need to go in that sort of area, across the top of the bulkhead, and then this branch here goes down and does the top of the engine. And what I've done is I've just wrapped a little bit of tape around intervals. So I've got these 2 wires going that direction, alternator wires going down there, and then we've got 3 wires going to the ignition, which is what I need. 1 from the starter solenoid, 1 to the distributor, and 1 from the ignition control feed, which I've now got up here. So next thing to do is bind this fucker. But what I might do first of all, before I bind it, is test it. Be useful, wouldn't it? Be nice to test it to make sure it works before I bind it all up. That would be the sensible thing to do, wouldn't it? Yes, children, it would. Right, so I've got to put a couple of terminals on now then. I need a terminal on there, then I can connect all of the positive side up along with the 2 connectors that go onto the back of the starter motor. So I might bind that end up already, because it's going to be a bastard to bind it once it's all fitted, and I don't want to have to unfit it again. So I'm going to bind that bit that goes down towards the starter motor, because I know it's going to work. I haven't changed anything down there, apart from 1 wire which I've changed, which goes all the way through to the alternator. And there's the end of it there. That wire goes to the alternator, so I'll put that plug on as well. Yes. Made all the connections up. Everything's connected. Moment of truth. Let's see what happens when I put the alternator. No massive spark. It's always a good start, isn't it? Let's do that up. I need to put petroleum jelly on those still, so don't get too excited about writing in saying you've got to put lube on your battery terminals. I know. Right, next, let us fail there. Pause. Right, I had to get the brake's not fucking working. Oh, the lock off the floor. Right, okay, so let's give him a go. See if he starts up. It's all a bit wobbly down here. I've got to fix that. Oh, that's good news. Ignition lights are on. What do you reckon? Right, there's nothing going to the starter motor, which means I've got the starter solenoid wire and the other wire the wrong way round, down here. 2 wires, 2 spades on the back of the solenoid. I'll swap those over. Right, swap those over. Reconnect battery. It's only because there was a load of live terminals down there and I really didn't fancy a shower of sparks. He's done. Right, now let's try. Oh, yeah. Ignition. I'm getting no starter solenoid action. What's gone wrong? Dirty connector. Run it sweet though. Take those 5, what's his name, those shims at the top. It works. Probably just need to check the volts on the battery. That black connector over there is going to get a tie wrap connected together. Try to do this one-handed. Yeah, I'm getting 14.2 volts. The alternator's working. Right, now I know it's all working. It's that fucking connector up there. I can bind this loom. Smoky Joe back here though. Right, really nice and quiet that. Now I've got a good feed going to the coil, I'm probably going to need to redo the ignition timing, not ignition timing, the idle speed. Let's just see if the controls down here are working. Yes, they are. And we know handbrake light works, that's good. Diff lock works. Reverse lights is the only one we haven't checked. I've got to balance the camera up on the bench and do a reverse light check, aren't I? Bit of a carbon monoxide problem going on in here. So now we've got the engine running sweet and not fucking tapping away. This choke's not coming off. That's why it's smoking. The choke is not springing back. That's the next job after I bound the loom. But it runs. Well, right, that's one job finished. Well, almost finished. So I've cable tied that connector, bound the loom, I'm happy enough with that. There's another little issue this car's had recently, and it's been the start click anomaly. When you turn the starter, it just goes click. Now, the click comes from the relay, but there's also a click comes from the solenoid. When I pull these terminals off the relay, yeah, I'm going to remake those 3 terminals. So basically the way a relay works is you get the feed from the battery on the big fat brown wire, you got the feed to the solenoid on the brown wire with the red connector. And unless the circuit is energized by the ignition switch, which is the little white wire, then nothing ain't going to happen. So I am going to remake all those ends. There's a little earth on here, and that is the best of the lot, that one, but I'll even remake that little cable. And that should then hopefully resolve the start or the turn click. Then next, okay, so connector, this thing that's at fault again. What I've done is I've took it apart, pulled the connector apart, used my centre punch inside each of the male plugs and just clicked it. It's popped together. I can't get the fucker apart now to demonstrate how I did it. I think it's been the root cause of a number of issues. Without doing anything else, oh, we've got an ignition light. And we've got Mr. Starty too. So I think that's fixed that. Finally. Right, we need to get on with choke and stuff now. I might go and grab some lunch. I knew it was that because getting the long bit of brown wire, I bridged from the battery positive to the red, the brown and red wire, which goes to the solenoid, and the engine fired over. So I knew it was that. I've also remade all these connections down here, all fresh and happy. I might put this clip on the other way up. If I put that clip the other way up, it will support it better. And yeah, so basically what I've done is I've combined the large free pulley of a 3.9 V8 with the outer pulley and inner damper from a SD1 pulley, and now everything lines up beautifully. It's all going to have to come off though, because I now need to true up the front pulley and make sure that that is running true. Let me get it off and I'll show you the reason this was such a ball's ache. Right, so this is the remains of the inner pulley. This is the pulley that kind of sat around there, the smaller pulley. In fact, it's almost exactly the same as that one there. But for some reason, and it is exactly the same as that, but for some reason, inexplicable, it was spot welded onto the outer dish. So I cleaned up all the surface of it. This is the inner face. When I took the pulley off, it came off with that. Couldn't find any spot welds, and eventually identified them on the sides here. So started drilling through those, and eventually, after a load of swearing, probably should have videoed it, I got the outer half of the bottom pulley. For some reason, it's in multiple parts. I mean, I guess that's how they put these things together. You can see this one's got exactly the same spot welds on it. Now, having got that off, I would have thought that the inner pulley would have just come off, no problems at all. But no, it had been spot welded right the way through to the big pulley. So I drilled all those through, there we are, and in the end lost my rag with it and just very, very carefully cut through the edge of it to release any tension. And off it pops. And then on the back of the big pulley was this fella. So again, found 3 spot welds, drilled them, popped it off. The reason I drilled that off is because I've got the reinforcing plate on the front now. And that now runs true. There's a tiny little ding there. There's a couple of things to marvel at here. First of all, the trueness of that pulley. Look at that. That was done by eye as well. Fix the choke. Fix the wiring. I've got to put the washer bottle in it. Fix the tappets. Listen to them. They're beautiful, aren't they? Let's go for a ride around the block in this. What a difference. Let's sort this wing out. I've got a new wing to go on. But need the bracket to sort that out. Voltage working. I haven't wired the other 2 gauges up yet. I need to do that. Door. Beautiful.